5 breakfast foods that quietly guard your kidneys after 60, recommended by nephrologists. Here's something that should stop you cold. By the time most people learn their kidneys are in trouble, they've already lost more than half of what those organs can do. That's not an exaggeration meant to scare you. It's simply how kidneys behave. They are relentless overachievers. They will keep filtering, keep balancing, keep quietly holding your body together even as their capacity drops by 40%, 50%, sometimes more. And they'll do it without a single warning sign. No pain, no pressure, no dramatic collapse. Just a slow, silent fading that begins long before you'd ever suspect anything is wrong. Often right at the breakfast table, before you've even finished your first cup of coffee. And that first meal of the day matters far more than almost anyone has bothered to tell you. When you wake up, your body is in one of its most sensitive states. What you feed it in that early window can either help your kidneys recover from the night's work or quietly add to a burden they've been carrying for years. Most people over 60 are unknowingly choosing the second option, not because they're careless, because the guidance they've been handed is missing half the story. Think about what kidney advice usually sounds like. Cut the salt, watch the potassium, ease off the protein. It's always about taking things away. Doctors give you a list of what to avoid, and that's where the conversation ends. But here's the problem with restriction on its own. Telling your kidneys what not to eat does nothing to give them what they actually need to stay strong. It's like being told to stop pouring water out of a bucket while nobody tells you the bucket has a leak. You need more than avoidance. You need active support. And that's what almost no one talks about. What you can put on your plate every single morning that helps your kidneys filter better, calms the inflammation eating away at their delicate blood vessels, and slows down what most physicians will casually wave off as the natural decline of getting older. That phrase, natural decline, deserves a harder look, because a good portion of what gets blamed on aging inside the kidneys isn't aging at all. It's damage. Cumulative, repeated, dietary damage, delivered one meal at a time, and very often starting with breakfast. Let me tell you what your kidneys are actually doing while you sleep. All night long, they're filtering close to half a liter of blood every minute. By the time you wake, after 7 or 8 hours of relative quiet, they're recalibrating. They're fine-tuning the hormones that manage your blood pressure, your red blood cell production, your calcium balance. They're primed and ready. And the meal you eat in that first hour of waking either supports that reset or throws it off. For most Americans over 60, breakfast throws it off. Boxed cereal packed with hidden phosphate additives, bottled orange juice that sends blood sugar soaring, bacon and sausage swimming in sodium and saturated fat that tightens the arteries feeding your kidneys within half an hour, white toast that stokes inflammation from the gut outward, and coffee, which is perfectly fine on its own, but on an empty stomach it rides alongside a stress hormone spike that squeezes down blood flow to your kidneys right as the day begins. None of this feels like anything. That's the trap. Your kidneys don't scream, they endure. And by the time you notice swelling in your ankles, or a change in the color of your urine, or a bone-deep tiredness that hits every afternoon for no reason you can name, the damage isn't new. It's been building quietly for years. So let's talk about what nephrologists, the doctors who spend their entire careers watching how food shapes kidney function, actually want on your plate first thing in the morning. I've spent a good deal of time going through this with patients, and I'll walk you through it the way I would in my own office. My name is Dr. Jessica Williams, and by the end of this, you'll understand not just what to eat, but why each of these foods does something real inside your body. Because once you understand the why, breakfast stops feeling like a set of rules and starts feeling like something you're doing for yourself. Let's start with the first food, and it's probably already sitting in your refrigerator right now. Eggs. More specifically, egg whites. For years, eggs got a bad reputation among people worried about their kidneys, and the reason always came back to protein. Now, that concern isn't nonsense. Protein does matter for kidney health, but the way that concern got applied was far too blunt. What nephrologists have made much clearer in recent years is that the kind of protein you eat, and the context you eat it in changes everything. Egg whites deliver what we call high biological value protein. In plain terms, that means your body uses almost all of it efficiently and produces very little nitrogen waste in the process. And nitrogen waste is exactly what your kidneys have to strain to filter out. Less waste means less work for your kidneys. For someone in the early or middle stages of kidney decline, 1 or 2 egg whites at breakfast delivers the amino acids you need to hold on to muscle. And holding on to muscle after 60 genuinely matters, because muscle loss speeds up kidney stress all on its own. And it does all this without flooding your filtration system. Now, what about the yolk? Here's the honest answer. If your kidneys are healthy, a whole egg at breakfast is not a problem. If you've been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease and you're watching your phosphorus carefully, going easy on the yolks is a fair precaution, because yolks carry more phosphorus than the whites. But that old reflex to fear eggs entirely as some kidney enemy? That thinking is outdated. Egg whites in particular are now considered one of the friendliest proteins available for older adults trying to protect their kidneys. And that alone should make you rethink what you reach for tomorrow morning. But eggs are only the beginning, because the next food does something eggs can't touch. The second food is one almost nobody thinks of as protecting kidneys at all: oatmeal. And I don't mean those flavored instant packets loaded with sugar and dosed with potassium additives. I mean plain rolled oats, cooked simply, maybe with a splash of unsweetened almond milk or a small handful of berries, and nothing else. What plain oats do for your kidneys actually happens on 3 separate levels at once, and understanding even one of them might change your morning for good. Start with the fiber. Oats contain a special soluble fiber called beta-glucan, and beta-glucan binds to cholesterol right there in your digestive tract, before it ever makes it into your bloodstream. Why should your kidneys care about cholesterol? Because tucked inside your kidneys are millions of tiny filtration clusters, and each one is wrapped in delicate little blood vessels. When those vessels get thickened and stiffened by years of cholesterol buildup, your filtration efficiency drops. It's the very same process that clogs the arteries around your heart, just happening somewhere far quieter, somewhere nobody ever thinks to look. Eating beta-glucan fiber regularly is one of the most direct ways you can protect the blood vessels your kidneys depend on to survive. Then there's blood sugar, and this connection cannot be overstated. Kidney damage driven by chronically high blood sugar is now the single leading cause of kidney failure in the developed world. And here's the part that surprises people. You do not need a diabetes diagnosis for blood sugar to be quietly injuring your kidneys. Every time refined breakfast carbs send your glucose spiking, a process called glycation kicks in. Glycation is essentially sugar molecules latching onto the proteins in your kidney's filtration membranes and slowly stiffening them, scarring them, hardening them over time. Oats slow the absorption of glucose, which softens that spike. One morning barely matters, but morning after morning, year after year, it adds up to something enormous. And there's a third mechanism you've probably never heard about at all: the gut-kidney connection. Research published in kidney journals over the past decade has shown that the health of the bacteria living in your gut directly shapes how kidney disease progresses. When your gut bacteria fall out of balance, certain strains start producing toxins that slip into your bloodstream, travel to your kidneys, and speed up the damage. Oats act as a prebiotic, feeding the good bacteria that keep those toxin producers in check. So that humble bowl of plain oatmeal isn't just steadying your blood sugar, it's reshaping the bacterial balance in your gut in a way that reaches all the way down to your kidney's filtration membranes. Hardly anyone eating cereal every morning has ever been told this. And that missing piece of the puzzle is quietly costing people their organ function. But if oatmeal surprised you, the third food is going to catch you completely off guard. The third breakfast food recommended by nephrologists is red bell peppers. And no, not as some lunch or dinner salad add-on, as a morning food. Sliced raw alongside your eggs, diced into an omelet, or roasted the night before and folded in the next day. Red bell peppers are, in a sense, one of the most intelligently designed foods your kidneys could ask for. because they pack an incredible amount of antioxidant power while carrying remarkably little potassium and phosphorus. Half a medium red bell pepper contains only around 150 milligrams of potassium, which lands it firmly in the kidney-safe zone, even for people on restricted diets. But the payload packed inside that gentle mineral profile is where things get remarkable. Red bell peppers deliver more vitamin C, gram for gram, than oranges do. And vitamin C is one of the primary antioxidants that neutralizes the unstable, destructive molecules that build up in kidney tissue. That kind of oxidative stress is one of the two great drivers of kidney disease. The other is inflammation. And the cruel part is that these two feed each other in an endless loop. Oxidative stress fires up inflammation. Inflammation generates more oxidative stress, and around it goes. Red bell peppers help break both arms of that cycle. They also carry lycopene, the pigment that gives them their deep red color. Lycopene has been studied specifically for its ability to reduce fibrosis, which is the scarring of kidney tissue that follows repeated waves of inflammation. And here's why that matters so deeply. Once fibrosis sets in, it's largely permanent. Scarred kidney tissue does not filter. It's simply lost. Which means prevention is the entire game here, and lycopene contributes to that prevention in a way no medication currently matches with the same safety. So a food most people never even consider for breakfast turns out to be quietly guarding your kidneys against the one kind of damage you can never undo. But the fourth food is one you may have actually been warned to avoid, and that warning has done real harm. The fourth food is berries. Blueberries and cranberries, specifically, eaten in modest amounts. The fear around berries always traces back to potassium. And it's true. Some fruits, like bananas and kiwis, carry enough potassium to justify caution if your kidney disease is advanced. But blueberries and cranberries sit in an entirely different category. A half cup of blueberries holds roughly 57 milligrams of potassium. That's genuinely low. And what you get in return for that tiny potassium cost is extraordinary. Blueberries contain some of the highest concentrations of anthocyanins found in any food. Anthocyanins are the pigments behind that deep blue-purple color, and their effect on kidney tissue has become a serious subject of scientific study. In research on both animals and humans, anthocyanin consumption has been linked to reduced markers of kidney cell injury, lower levels of the inflammatory proteins tied to kidney damage, and measurably better preservation of filtration rate over time. These aren't vague, feel-good claims about antioxidants. These are specific findings about protecting kidney cells. Cranberries bring something different to the table. Most people know them for preventing urinary tract infections, and the compounds responsible for that, which stop bacteria from clinging to the lining of the urinary tract, also extend protection upward toward the kidneys themselves. And this matters more than you'd think, because recurring urinary infections that climb up to the kidneys are a significant cause of long-term kidney damage in older adults, particularly in women. A small serving of unsweetened cranberries, or unsweetened cranberry juice cut with water, is a simple, steady safeguard that more and more nephrologists are folding into their advice for patients over 60. Now picture combining those blueberries and cranberries over that bowl of plain oatmeal. In a single meal, the beta-glucan is feeding your gut bacteria. The anthocyanins are shielding your filtration membranes. The cranberry compounds are guarding your urinary tract. And the whole thing is keeping your blood sugar steady all morning long. And that stability doesn't just help your morning. It quietly shapes your afternoon too, because it prevents that midday energy crash that sends so many people reaching for processed snacks, the very kind of snacks that do to your kidneys at 3 in the afternoon, exactly what that boxed cereal did at 7 in the morning. But there's still one food left, and it's the one that stirs up the most resistance of all. The fifth food tends to make people bristle, not because it's hard to eat, but because of an association that's hardened over decades. Plain low-fat yogurt. Not the fruit-flavored kind, not the sugar-loaded kind, and not the versions marketed as kidney-friendly that quietly swap in potassium chloride salts to cut the sodium. The protein in yogurt is casein-based, which digests slowly and puts far less sudden nitrogen strain on your kidneys than the protein in meat. For someone who needs protein but needs to spread its impact gently across the day, a morning serving of plain low-fat yogurt delivers a controlled, moderate dose your kidneys can handle without a filtration surge. And the probiotics bring us right back to that gut-kidney connection. The live cultures in yogurt, certain lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains, actively compete with the toxin-producing bacteria in your colon. Several controlled trials have now shown measurable drops in one of those key kidney-stressing toxins in patients who take regular probiotics. Plain yogurt isn't a pharmaceutical, but eating it regularly nudges your gut toward the kind of balance that has real downstream effects on your kidneys. And unlike supplements, where the bacteria vary wildly in how many actually survive, the cultures in plain yogurt are consistently present and consistently studied. The pushback on yogurt usually comes down to phosphorus, because dairy does contain phosphorus. That's true. But here's the distinction that changes everything. The phosphorus in dairy is organic phosphorus, which your body has to actively break down with enzymes to absorb, so only a portion of it ever enters your bloodstream. The phosphorus added to processed foods, those phosphate additives in fast food, packaged meats, and commercial baked goods, is inorganic phosphate, and your body absorbs it almost completely, often more than 90% of it. The nephrology community has grown increasingly clear about this. It isn't the total phosphorus in your diet that matters most. It's the source. A serving of plain yogurt places a completely different burden on your kidneys than the phosphate-laced English muffin it might replace. So what ties all 5 of these foods together? It isn't just what each one does alone. It's what they build together across a single morning. Steady blood sugar, active antioxidant protection in the tiny blood vessels feeding your kidneys, prebiotic and probiotic support for that gut-kidney axis, protein delivered gently, without a filtration surge, and specific anti-inflammatory compounds aimed straight at the pathways known to drive kidney scarring and decline. And none of this is abstract theory. Right now, inside you, roughly 1 million filtering units per kidney are hard at work. You were born with around 2 million total, and here's the hard truth. You cannot grow new ones. Every one lost to inflammation, to oxidative damage, to glycation, to high blood pressure, to infection, is gone for good. The remaining units work harder to make up the difference, and that compensation can hide the loss for years. But compensation has a ceiling, and the breakfast table is one of the places where that ceiling either holds steady or drops a little lower, every single day. The nephrologists who study this most closely aren't chasing miracle supplements or expensive procedures. They're pointing at what you eat before your day even begins. Because your kidneys, unlike your liver, don't regenerate. What you protect, you keep. What you lose to years of silent injury, you don't get back. And the hardest part of all of this is precisely that silence. There was never a moment when your kidneys warned you. No pain that whispered, "This breakfast is hurting us." The damage showed up in no sensation you could feel, only in a lab number creeping upward on a page once a year. A number most people don't know how to read, and most doctors don't have the time to explain in a way that would actually change what you do the next morning. That gap, between silent damage and visible consequence, is where nearly all kidney disease quietly lives. And it's where breakfast, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, becomes the most important medical decision that never once feels like a medical decision. Consider what happens in your body in the first 90 minutes after you wake. Cortisol peaks. It's your natural alarm system, meant to sharpen your focus and get you moving. But cortisol also raises your blood pressure and briefly tightens your blood vessels, including the arteries feeding your kidneys. In a healthy body, that morning spike resolves quickly and cleanly. In a body where those arteries are already stiffened by years of inflammation and cholesterol, it doesn't resolve so neatly. It leaves a small residue, and a small insult, repeated every single morning for a decade, becomes structural injury. What you eat in that cortisol window either amplifies that stress or softens it. Refined carbs amplify it, spiking your insulin and keeping your whole system unstable for hours. These 5 foods work, in part, because they interrupt that cascade at its most vulnerable point. The fiber slows everything down. The antioxidants mop up the byproducts of that hormonal surge. The probiotics calm the gut signals that would otherwise let bacterial toxins slip into your bloodstream by mid-morning. Most people never connect their 11 a.m. fatigue to their 7 a.m. breakfast. They blame it on age, on bad sleep, on stress. And those things are real. But the thread running from a high-sodium, blood sugar-spiking breakfast to that mid-morning exhaustion runs directly through your kidneys, straining to compensate for a hostile internal environment. When your kidneys are working harder than they should, your body registers it as a diffuse, heavy tiredness that no amount of caffeine truly fixes. Because caffeine doesn't touch the filtration burden, it only masks the signal for a while. This is the part of kidney health that almost never gets explained in a doctor's office. Not because your physician doesn't know it, but because the appointment is 12 minutes long and the priority is the medication list. The diet conversation, if it happens at all, gets crushed down into a pamphlet listing foods to avoid. Everything I've walked you through here, the mechanisms, the morning timing, the hormonal context, the gut connection, that's exactly what the pamphlet leaves out. And that omission matters, because understanding why a food protects you completely changes your relationship to eating it. When you truly grasp that the beta-glucan in your oatmeal is physically grabbing hold of cholesterol before it can reach the delicate vessels around your kidneys' filters, breakfast stops feeling like deprivation or willpower. It starts feeling like agency, like a quiet, measurable act of self-preservation, with no prescription, no copay, and no side effects. So here's what I'd leave you with. Tomorrow morning, before you reach for whatever's convenient, remember that the kidneys you have right now are the only ones you'll ever get. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. Start with one meal, a couple of egg whites, a bowl of plain oats, a handful of blueberries, some sliced red pepper, a serving of plain yogurt. Build it slowly, keep it simple, and let it become the one part of your day that's quietly working in your favor. Because every single morning is an opportunity. And it's an opportunity that yesterday's breakfast hasn't taken away from you yet.